Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome back to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books right here in the live studios at Radha Lane, 3402 to be exact. It's a real address. Okay, we had a special feast cooked by Padaduli today because Bhakta Marcus is going to take a journey with his mother somewhere and then his father somewhere. So we had a going away feast. It's kind of not, it wasn't the Last Supper, but it was going away feast. And they defeated us soundly. So if I can read properly now, it'll be a miracle. So I need all the mercy I can get from all the Vaishnavas out there in cyberspace. Send me your blessings, empowerment. Okay, but this is good for what ails us, whatever condition we are in. When we hear the Srimad-Bhagavatam, we come brought back to the reality of who we are, eternal servants of Krishna. Okay, Srila Sanatana Goswami appreciated this more than anyone, or as much as anyone, and therefore he compiled this stotra, Srimad-Bhagavata Mahima Stotra, and here he glorifies the Bhagavatam and explains ontologically its situation, what it is, what its position is, what our position is in relationship to the Bhagavatam, how we should feel about it, in an effort to help us go deeper, with more enthusiasm and spiritual submission. The only way we can get Krishna by hearing is by hearing with submissive oral reception, and that requires that we become submissive. So here it goes, Sanatana Goswami's glorification of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Sarva Shastrabdi Piyusha, Sarva Vedaika Satpala, Sarva Siddhanta Ratnaja, Sarva Lokaika Drikprada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana, Srimad Bhagavata Prabho, Kalidvandodita Ditya, Shri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshakshadayate Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. Madeka Bando Matsangin Madguro Man Mahadana Mandishtaraga Madbhagya Mad Ananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu saduta dayin atini chochatakada hanamun chagada chinmam premnarit kantayospura. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we reached the 74th chapter of the 10th canto. And Krishna has eliminated Jarasandha, major stumbling block to the purification of the world and the changing of the guard, the changing of the leadership of the world, placing Yudhishthir, getting ready to place Yudhishthir in the, as a Samaraj, the emperor of the earth. The sovereignty of the earth is being transferred. Now, it's time to deal with, was he Jai or Vijay? Sarva, was he Jai or Vijay? Remember? Shishupal was Jai, I think. I'm not sure. Anyway, he was one, either Jai or Vijay. And Dantavakra. He's getting ready to, close up the relieving the burden of the earth, these last big demons. Okay, chapter 74. The deliverance of Sisupala at the Rajasuya sacrifice. This chapter describes how Lord Krishna received the honor of first worship during the Rajasuya sacrifice and how he killed Sisupala. After glorifying Lord Krishna, King Yudhishthira selected qualified brahmanas such as Bharadwaj, Gautama, and Vasishta to serve as the priests of the Rajasuya sacrifice. Then many exalted guests of the four social orders arrived to see the sacrificial performance. As the sacrifice proceeded, the ritual of first worship had to be performed, and the members of the assembly were called upon to decide who would receive this honor. Sahadev spoke up. Sri Krishna, the Supreme Lord, is indeed the most exalted person, for he himself comprises all the deities worshipped by Vedic sacrifice. In his role as the Supersoul in the heart, he arranges for everyone in the universe to engage in his particular kind of work. And by his mercy alone, human beings can perform various kinds of pious activities and receive the resultant benefits. One who worships him worships all living entities. Surely Lord Krishna should be worshipped first. Nearly everyone in the assembly agreed with Sahadev's proposal and loudly congratulated him. Thus, King Yudhishthira happily worshipped Lord Krishna. After bathing his feet, the king took the wash water and sprinkled it on his own head and then on the heads of his wife, younger brothers, ministers, and relatives. Then everyone shouted, "All victory, all victory," and bowed down to Lord Krishna as flowers rained down from above. Sisupala, however, could not tolerate this worship and glorification of Sri Krishna. He stood up from his seat and harshly rebuked the wise elders for choosing Krishna to be worshipped first. After all, he said, this Krishna is outside the system of Vedic social and spiritual orders and the society of respectable families. He follows no principles of religion and has no good qualities. Even as Sisupala continued to blaspheme him in this way, Lord Krishna remained silent. You might remember that he remained silent because he gave him a benediction somehow or other. I don't remember the details. He gave him that he could blaspheme him 100 times without retribution. So he sat there and waited until he reached 100, and then. But many members of the assembly covered their ears and quickly left the hall, while the Pandava brothers raised their weapons and prepared to kill Sisupala. Lord Krishna stopped them from attacking, however, and instead used his Sudarshan disc to decapitate the offender. At that moment, an effulgent spark of light rose out of Sisupala's dead body and entered the transcendental body of Lord Krishna. Having lived through 3 births as the enemy of enemy of the Lord, Sisupala now attained the liberation of Sayuja, merging into him by dint of his constant meditation on him. Yudhishthira then distributed profuse gifts to the respective guests of the assembly and to the priests, and finally he executed the purificatory oblations known as the Prayaschitta Homa, which counteract errors made during the sacrifice. Yudhishthira's Rajasuya sacrifice having now been completed, Lord Krishna took his leave from the king and set off for Dwarka in the company of his wives and ministers. Duryodhana could not bear to see this abundant manifestation of King Yudhishthira's prosperity, but apart from him, everyone happily praised the glories of the Rajasuya sacrifice and of the Lord of all sacrifices, Sri Krishna. So in effect, Yudhishthira was already crowned the king before the battle. Interesting. Text 1. So he had the spiritual empowerment already. He was authorized, spiritual authorization. Text 1. Shukadev Goswami said, having thus heard of the killing of Jarasandha and also of Almighty Krishna's wonderful power, King Yudhishthira addressed the Lord as follows, with great pleasure. 2. Sri Yudhishthira said, all the exalted spiritual masters of the three worlds, together with the inhabitants and rulers of the various planets, carry on their heads your command, which is rarely obtained. Purport. Srila Prabhupada renders Maharaj Yudhishthira's statement as follows. My dear Krishna, O eternal form of bliss and knowledge, all the exalted directors of the affairs of this material world, including Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and King Indra, are always eager to receive and carry out orders from you. And whenever they are fortunate enough to receive such orders, they immediately take them and keep them on their heads. Text 3. After that you, the lotus-eyed Supreme Lord, accept the orders of wretched fools who presume themselves rulers is a great pretense on your part, O all-pervading one. Purport. Srila Prabhupada writes, Yudhishthira said, O Krishna, you are unlimited, and although we sometimes think of ourselves as royal kings and rulers of the world, and become puffed up over our paltry positions, you are very proof. We are very proof. We are very poor in heart. Actually, we are fit to be punished by you. But the wonder is that instead of punishing us, you so kindly and mercifully accept our orders and carry them out properly. We are all very much surprised that your Lordship can play the part of an ordinary human being. But we can understand that you are performing these activities just like a dramatic artist. Text 4. But of course the power of the Absolute Truth, the Supreme Soul, the Primeval One without a second, is neither increased nor diminished by his activities, any more than the sun's power is by its movements. Purport. Srila Prabhupada writes in Krishna, King Yudhishthira said, your real position is always exalted, exactly like that of the sun, which always remains at the same temperature during both the time of its rising and the time of its setting. Although we feel the difference in temperature between the rising and the setting sun, the temperature of the sun never changes. You are always transcendentally equipoised, neither pleased nor disturbed by any condition of material affairs. You are the Supreme Brahman, the personality of Godhead, and for you there are no relativities. Srila Sridhar Swami quotes a similar statement from the Vedic mantras. na karmana vartate no kadiyan. Shatapata Brahmana, 14:7-28. Taittiriya Brahmana, 3:12-9-7, and Brihat Aranyaka Upanishad, 4:4-23. He is not increased by his activities, nor does he become lesser. As explained here by King Yudhishthir, the Lord is one without a second. There is no other entity in his supreme category, and thus it is simply by his causeless mercy that he agrees to carry out the orders of his pure devotees, like Maharaj Yudhishthir. There is certainly no loss of status for the Supreme Personality of Godhead when he thus extends his causeless mercy to his surrendered devotees. Text 5. O unconquerable Madhava, even your devotees make no distinctions of I and mine, you and yours, for this is the perverted mentality of animals. Purport. No ordinary person thinks, I am so attractive, intelligent, and wealthy that people should simply serve me and do what I want. Why should I obey anyone else? This proud, separatist mentality is also found in animals who battle one another for supremacy. Such a mentality is conspicuously absent in the mind of an advanced devotee, and it is certainly absent in the sublime, omniscient mind of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text 6. Shukadeva Goswami said, having said this, King Yudhishthir waited until the proper time for the sacrifice. Shukadeva Goswami said, having said this, King Yudhishthir waited until the proper time for the sacrifice was at hand. Then, with Lord Krishna's permission, he selected suitable priests, all expert authorities on the Vedas, to execute the sacrifice. Purport. The great Bhagavatam commentator, Sridhar Swami, explains that the proper time for the sacrifice mentioned here was the spring. Text 7-9. He selected Krishna Dvaipayana, Bharadwaj, Sumantu, Gotama, and Asita, along with Vasishta, Chaivana, Kanva, Maitreya, Kabasha, and Trita. He also selected Vishwamrita, Vamadev, Sumati, Jaimini, Kratu, Paila, and Parashara, as well as Garga, Vaishampayana, Atharva, Kashyapa, Domya, Rama of the Bhargavas, Asuri, Bitihotra, Madhuchanda, Virasena, and Akritavrana. I mean, all these personalities were in the Mahabharata. A lot of them were in the Mahabharata. That means all these personalities are from the highest planetary systems, and they stay for the duration of the universe. Very old, these great sages. Purport. King Yudhishthir invested all these exalted brahmanas to act in different capacities as priests, advisors, and so on. So this is a very big sacrifice. This is the biggest sacrifice. You know, sometimes a sacrifice will need 4 priests, sometimes it'll need 16, sometimes it'll need a whole bunch more. So all of the facilities, all of the paraphernalia, all of the mantras, you know, this is full-on, needing all 4 Vedas and all the ritualistic performances needed to perform the biggest sacrifice. This is Rajasuya, king of sacrifices. 10-11. O king, others who were invited included Drona, Bhishma, Kripa, Dhritarashtra with his sons, the wise Vidura, and many other brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras, all eager to witness the sacrifice. Indeed, all the kings came there with their entourages. Text 12. The Brahmana priests then plowed the sacrificial ground with golden plowshares and initiated King Yudhishthira for the sacrifice in accordance with the traditions set down by standard authorities. 13 to 15. The utensils used in the sacrifice were made of gold, just as in the ancient Rajasuya performed by Lord Varuna, Indra, Brahma, Shiva, and many other planetary rulers, the Siddhas, the Gandharvas with their entourage, the Vidyadharas, great serpents, sages, yakshas, rakshasas, celestial birds, kinnaras, charanas, and earthly kings. All were invited, and indeed they all came from every direction to the Rajasuya sacrifice of King Yudhishthira. O son of Pandu, they were not in the least astonished to see the opulence of the sacrifice, since it was quite appropriate for a devotee of Lord Krishna. Purport. Maharaj Yudhishthira was universally famous as a great devotee of Lord Krishna, and thus nothing was impossible for him. Text 16. The priests, as powerful as gods, performed the Rajasuya sacrifice for King Yudhishthira in accordance with the Vedic injunctions, just as the demigods had previously performed it for Varuna. 17. On the day of extracting the soma juice, King Yudhishthira properly and very attentively worshipped the priests and the most exalted personalities of the assembly. Purport. Srila Prabhupada writes in Krishna, according to the Vedic system, whenever there is an arrangement for sacrifice, the members participating are offered the juice of the soma plant, which is a kind of life-giving beverage. On the day for extracting the soma juice, King Yudhishthira very respectfully received the special priest who had been engaged to detect any mistake in the formalities of the sacrificial procedure. The idea is that the Vedic mantras must be enunciated perfectly and chanted with the proper accent. If the priests who are engaged in this business commit any mistake, the checker or referee immediately corrects the procedure, and thus the ritualistic performances are perfectly executed. Unless perfectly executed, a sacrifice cannot yield the desired result. In this age of Kali, there is no learned brahmanas or priest available. Therefore, all such sacrifices are forbidden. The only sacrifice recommended in the Shastras is the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. Text 18. The members of the assembly then pondered over who among them should be worshipped first. But since there were many personalities qualified for this honor, they were unable to decide. Finally, Sahadev spoke up. Purport. Srila Prabhupada writes, another important procedure is that the most exalted personality in the assembly of such a sacrificial ceremony is first offered worship. This particular ceremony is called Agra Puja. Agra means first, and Puja means worship. This Agra Puja is similar to the election of a president. In the sacrificial assembly, all the members were very exalted. Some proposed to elect one person as the perfect candidate for accepting Agra Puja, and others proposed someone else. As the great Acharya, Srila Jiva Goswami points out, text 15 of this chapter states that the members of the assembly were not astonished at the opulence of the sacrifice, since they knew that King Yudhishthira was a devotee of Lord Krishna. Still, text 18 now states that the assembly could not select the most deserving candidate for being worshipped first. This indicates that many of the brahmanas present were not fully realized transcendentalists, but rather conventional brahmanas, uncertain of the supreme conclusion of Vedic wisdom. Similarly, Acharya Vishwanath comments that the undecided members of the assembly were the less intelligent ones, and not such exalted personalities as Brahma, Shiva, and Dvaipayana, Vyasadeva, who thought, since today no one is asking our opinion, why should we say anything? Furthermore, here is Sahadev, who was renowned for his sharp skill in analyzing all sorts of circumstances. He can help appoint the person who is to be worshipped first. Only if he somehow fails to speak or cannot understand the situation will we speak up, despite no one's having inquired from us. Having made up their minds in this way, the greatest personalities remained silent. This is how Vishwanath Chakravarti advises us to understand what occurred in the assembly. Text 19. Sahadev said, certainly it is Achyuta, the Supreme Personality of Godhead and Chief of the Yadavas, who deserves the highest position. In truth, he himself comprises all the demigods worshipped and sacrificed, along with such aspects of the worship as the sacred place, the time, and the paraphernalia. Text 20 and 21. The entire universe is founded upon him, as are the great sacrificial performances with their sacred fires, oblations, and mantras. Sankhya and Yoga both aim toward him, the one without a second. O assembly members, that unborn Lord, relying solely on himself, creates, maintains, and destroys this cosmos by his personal energies, and thus the existence of this universe depends on him alone. 22. He creates the many activities of this world, and thus by his grace the whole world endeavors for the ideals of religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. Text 20. Therefore, we should give the highest honor to Krishna, the Supreme Lord. If we do so, we will be honoring all living and also our own selves. Text 24. Anyone who wishes the honor he gives to be reciprocated infinitely should honor Krishna. I'll read that again. This is nice. Anyone who wishes the honor he gives to be reciprocated infinitely should honor Krishna, the perfectly peaceful and perfectly complete soul of all beings, the Supreme Lord, who views nothing as separate from himself. Purport. Srila Prabhupada writes as follows. Sahadev said, ladies and gentlemen, it is superfluous to speak about Krishna, because you exalted personalities knows the Supreme Brahman, Lord Krishna, for whom there are no material differences between body and soul, between energy and the energetic, or between one part of the body and another. Since everyone is full of Krishna, there is no qualitative difference between Krishna and all living entities. Everything is an emanation of Krishna's energies, the material and spiritual energies. Krishna's energies are like the heat and light. Krishna's energies are like the heat and light of the fire. There is no difference between the quality of heat and light and the fire itself. He should therefore be offered the first worship of this great sacrifice, and no one should disagree. Krishna is present as the super soul in every living being, and if we can satisfy him, then automatically every living being becomes satisfied. 25. Shukadeva Goswami continued, having said this, Sahadev who understood Lord Krishna's powers, fell silent. And having heard his words, all the saintly persons present congratulated him, exclaiming, "Excellent, excellent." Text 26. The king was delighted to hear this pronouncement of the Brahmanas, from which he understood the mood of the entire assembly. Overwhelmed with love, he fully worshipped Lord Krishna, the master of the senses. Text 27, 28. After bathing Lord Krishna's feet, Maharaj Yudhishthira joyfully sprinkled the water upon his own head and then upon the heads of his wife, brothers, other family members, and ministers. That water purifies the whole world. As he honored the Lord with presentations of yellow silken garments and precious golden ornaments, jeweled ornaments, the king's tear-filled eyes prevented him from looking directly at the Lord. Text 29. When they saw Lord Krishna thus honored, nearly all who were present joined their palms reverentially, explaining, "Obeisances to you, all victory to you," and then bowed down to him. Flowers rained down from above. Text 30. The intolerant son of Dhammaghosha became infuriated upon hearing the glorification of Lord Krishna's transcendental qualities. He stood up from his seat and angrily waving his arms, fearlessly spoke to the entire assembly the following harsh words against the Supreme Lord. Purport. Srila Prabhupada writes, in that meeting, King Sisupala was also present. He was an avowed enemy of Krishna for many reasons, especially because of Krishna's having stolen Rukmini from the marriage ceremony. Therefore, he could not tolerate such honor to Krishna and glorification of his qualities. Instead of being happy to hear the glories of the Lord, he became very angry. Srila Vishwanath Chakrabarti mentions that the reason Sisupala did not object when Sahadev proposed Krishna for the Agra Puja is that Sisupala wanted to ruin King Yudhishthira's sacrifice. If Sisupala had argued earlier against Lord Krishna's receiving the first worship and another person had been selected, the sacrifice would have then proceeded normally. Therefore, Sisupala allowed Krishna to be selected, waited until the worship was over, and then spoke up, hoping in this way to demonstrate that the sacrifice was now spoiled. Thus he would ruin the endeavor of Maharaj Yudhishthira. In this regard, the Acharya quotes the following Smriti reference. Apuja yatra pujante pujanam cha vyatikramaha. In the place where those who are not to be worshipped are worshipped, there is offense to those who are actually worshipable. There is also the following statement. Natihi shreya puja vyatikramaha. Improperly understanding who is to be worshipped and who is not to be worshipped will impede one's progress in life. Text 31. Sisupala said, the statement of the Vedas is the unavoidable controller of all has indeed been proven true, since the intelligence of wise elders has now become diverted by the words of a mere boy. 32. O leaders of the assembly, you know best who is a fit candidate for being honored. Therefore, you should not heed the words of a child when he claims that Krishna deserves to be worshipped. 33 and 34. How can you pass over the most exalted members of this assembly, topmost sages, dedicated to the absolute truth, endowed with powers of austerity, divine insight, and strict adherence to severe vows, sanctified by knowledge, and worshipped even by the rulers of the universe. How does this cowherd boy, the disgrace of his family, deserve your worship, any more than a crow deserves to eat the sacred purudasha rice cake? Purport. The great commentator Sridhar Swami has analyzed Sisupala's words as follows. The term Gopala means not only cowherd, but also protector of the Vedas and the earth. Similarly, Kula Pangsana has a double meaning. Sisupala intended it to mean the disgrace of his family, which is its meaning when divided as above. But the word may also be analyzed as Ku, Lapam, Ankshana, giving a totally different meaning. Kulapam indicates those who prattle with crooked words, contrary to the Vedas. And Ankshana, derived from the verb Ankshayati, means destroyer. In other words, he was praising Lord Krishna as he who vanquishes all misguided and frivolous speculations about the nature of truth. Similarly, although Sisupala wanted to compare Lord Krishna to a yata kaka, these words may also be divided yata akaka. In that case, according to Srila Sridhar Swami, the word kaka is a combination of ka and aka, which indicates material happiness and misery. Thus, Lord Krishna is akaka in the sense that he is beyond all material misery and happiness, being on the pure transcendental platform. Finally, Sisupala was right in saying that Lord Krishna does not deserve merely the purudasha cake, rice cake, offered to the lesser demigods as a substitute for the heavily beverage soma. In fact, Lord Krishna deserves to receive everything that we possess, since he is the ultimate proprietor of everything, including ourselves. Thus, we should give Lord Krishna our life and soul, not merely a ritualistic offering of rice cakes. That's a really nice description of the difference between ritualistic ceremonies and devotional service. Was it Marie Antoinette? Someone let them eat cake, you know. Okay. Text 35. How does one who follows no principles of the social and spiritual orders, or who has been excluded from all religious duties, who behaves whimsically, and who has no good qualities, how does such a person deserve to be worshipped? Purport. Srila Prabhupada comments, actually, Krishna does not belong to any caste, nor does he have to perform any occupational duty. It is stated in the Vedas that the Supreme Lord has nothing to do as his prescribed duty. Whatever has to be done on his behalf is executed by his different energies. Sisupala indirectly praised Krishna by saying that he is not within the jurisdiction of Vedic injunction. This is true because he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That he has no qualities means that Krishna has no material. And because he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he acts independently, not caring for conventions or social or religious principles. Text 36. Yayati cursed the dynasty of these Yadavas, and ever since then, they have been ostracized by honest men and addicted to liquor. How then does Krishna deserve to be worshipped? Purport. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti gives the inner meaning of the words of Sisupala to show how he continued unintentionally glorifying Lord Krishna and his Yadu dynasty. Even though the Yadus were cursed by Yayati, they have been relieved Bihishkritam, of this curse by great saints, and consequently they have been raised to a position of royal sovereignty by such persons as Kartavirya. Thus they have become absorbed in Pana, protecting the earth. Considering all this, how does Krishna, the chief of the Yadus, deserve useless vrita worship? Rather, he deserves opulent worship. Text 37. These Yadavas have abandoned the holy lands inhabited by saintly sages and have instead taken shelter of a fortress in the sea, a place where no Brahminical principles are observed. There, just like thieves, they harass their subjects. Purport. The words Brahmarshi Vehitan Deshan, holy lands inhabited by saintly sages, allude to the district of Mathura. Srila Prabhupada writes, Sisupala went crazy because of Krishna's being elected the supreme, first worshipped person in that meeting, and thus he spoke so irresponsibly that it appeared that he had lost all his good fortune. Text 38. Shukadeva Goswami continued, bereft of all good fortune, Sisupala spoke these and other insults. But the Supreme Lord said nothing, just as a lion ignores a jackal's cry. Text 39. Upon hearing such intolerable blasphemy of the Lord, several members of the assembly covered their ears and walked out, angrily cursing the king of Chedi. Text 40. Anyone who fails to immediately leave the place where he hears criticism of the Supreme Lord or his faithful devotee will certainly fall down, bereft of his pious credit. I'll read that again. Anyone who fails to immediately leave the place where he hears criticism of the Supreme Lord or his faithful devotee will certainly fall down, bereft of his pious credit. Text 41. Then the sons of Pandu became furious, and together with the warriors of the Matsya, Kaikaya, and Srinjaya clans, they rose up from their seats with weapons poised, ready to kill Sisupala. 42. Undaunted, Sisupala then stood up, took up his sword and shield in the midst of all the assembled kings, O Bharat, and hurled insults at those who sided with Lord Krishna. Text 43. At that point, the Supreme Lord stood up and checked his devotees. He then angrily sent forth his razor-sharp disc and severed the head of his enemy as he was attacking. Purport. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains the Lord's action as follows. If Lord Krishna had done nothing, there probably would have been a savage fight on the sacrificial grounds, and thus the whole ceremony would have been drenched in blood, spoiling the sanctified atmosphere. Therefore, in order to protect the Rajasuya sacrifice of Krishna's beloved devotee Yudhishthira, the Lord immediately severed Sisupala's head with his razor-sharp disc in such a way that not a drop of blood fell within the sacrificial grounds. That's Krishna. He knows what he's doing. Expert. Completely expert. Not easy thing to do. Okay. Text 44. When Sisupala was thus killed, a great roar and howl went up from the crowd. Taking advantage of that disturbance, the few kings who were supporters of Sisupala quickly left the assembly out of lives. Purport. The above translation is taken from Srila Prabhupada's Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text 45. An effulgent light rose from Sisupala's body, and as everyone watched, entered Lord Krishna like a meteor falling from the sky to the earth. Purport. In this connection, the Acharyas remind us that Sisupala is actually one of the Lord's eternal associates, playing the part of a belligerent demon. Thus, to most observers, it appears that Sisupala achieved the impersonal liberation of merging into Lord Krishna's bodily effulgence. In fact, after being liberated from his mortal frame, Sisupala returned to the side of his master, the Supreme Lord of the spiritual world. The following verse further explains this. Text 46. Obsessed with the hatred of Lord Krishna throughout 3 lifetimes, Sisupala attained the Lord's transcendental nature. Indeed, one's consciousness determines one's future birth. Purport. Sisupala and his friend, Dantavakra, who will be killed by Krishna in chapter 78, were previously Jai and Vijay, 2 gatekeepers in Vaikuntha. Because of an offense, the 4 Kumaras cursed them to take 3 births in the material world as demons. The first birth was as Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. The second as Ravana and Kumbhakarna, and the third as Sisupala and Dantavakra. In each birth, they were completely absorbed in enmity toward the Lord and were slain by him. Srila Prabhupada explains the position of Sisupala as follows. Although Sisupala acted as the enemy of Krishna, he was not for a single moment out of Krishna consciousness. He was always absorbed in thought of Krishna. And thus he got first the salvation of Sayuja Mukti, merging into the existence of the Supreme, and finally became reinstated in his original position of personal service. The Bhagavad Gita corroborates the fact that one who is absorbed in the thought of the Supreme Lord at the time of death immediately enters the kingdom of God after quitting his material body. The 3rd and 7th cantos of the Srimad-Bhagavatam elaborately describe the incident wherein the Lord's personal associates were cursed to come to the material world as his enemies. In this connection, Srila Vishwanath Chakraborty quotes the following verse, Bhagavatam 7:1-47. Vairanu bhanda tivrena jnana chuta satmatmatam nitau punar harir parshvam jagmatur vishnu parshadau. These 2 associates of Lord Vishnu, Jai and Vijay, maintained a feeling of enmity for a very long time. Because of always thinking of Krishna in this way, they regained the shelter of the Lord, having returned home, back to Godhead. Text 47. Emperor Yudhishthira gave generous gifts to the sacrificial priests and the members of the assembly, properly honoring all in the manner prescribed by the Vedas. He then took the Avabhrita bath. 48. Thus Sri Krishna, the Lord of all masters of mystic yoga, saw to the successful execution of this great sacrifice on behalf of King Yudhishthira. Afterwards, the Lord stayed with his intimate friends for a few months at their earnest request. Purport. Although Lord Krishna is the master of all masters of yoga, such as Lord Shiva, still he was controlled by King Yudhishthira's pure love. Thus the Lord personally saw to the successful completion of the king's sacrificial performance. And after that, he agreed to stay with his dear friends in Indraprastha for a few more months. Text 49. Then the Lord, the son of Devaki, took the reluctant permission of the king and returned to his capital with his wives and ministers. Text 50. I have already described to you in detail the history of the 2 residents of Vaikuntha who had to undergo repeated births in the material world because of being cursed by brahmanas. 51. Purified in the final Avabritya ritual, which marked the successful completion of the Rajasuya sacrifice, King Yudhishthira shone among the assembled Brahmanas and Kshatriyas like the king of the demigods himself. 52. The demigods, humans, and residents of intermediate heavens, all properly honored by the king, happily set off for their respective domains while singing the praises of Lord Krishna and the great sacrifice. Purport. According to Sridhar Swami, the term Kechara here refers to the Pramatas, mystic yogis who accompany Lord Shiva. Text 53. All were satisfied except sinful Duryodhana, the personification of the age of quarrel and the disease of the Kuru dynasty. He could not bear to see the flourishing opulence of the son of Pandu. Purport. Srila Prabhupada writes, Duryodhana by nature was very envious because of his sinful life, and he appeared in the dynasty of the Kurus as a chronic disease personified in order to destroy the whole family. Srila Sridhar Swami mentions that Duryodhana had hated pure religious principles. Text 54. Thus end the purports. One who recites these activities of Lord Vishnu, including the killing of Sisupala, the deliverance of the kings, and the performance of the Rajasuya sacrifice, is freed from all sins. Thus end the purports of the humble servants of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, to the 10th Canto, 74th chapter of Srimad-Bhagavatam, entitled The Deliverance of Sisupala at the Rajasuya sacrifice. Jai Maharaj Yudhishthira, Jai Sri Krishna, Jai the newly crowned king. Well done, well done, well done. The earth is saved for a while. Hare Krishna. Okay, we'll end our reading for tonight and turn it over to all of you for your reflections, discussions, deep penetrating. Yes, Bhakta Marcus, you can lead us off.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna, Bhakta Marcus.
But it was just a question. So being stated that the only prescribed yajna for this age of quarrel is the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, why is it that, what's the point of doing the fire yajnas ceremoniously in temples?
To follow the prescribed method. The acharyas have set it up like that. Our acharyas have, done the sacrifices, but they must be done with Nam Sankirtan.
Yeah.
Without Nam Sankirtan, they're not. Like, for instance, I'll give you the classic example. When the deities were installed in Krishna Balaram Mandir and the temple opened, Prabhupada had, at the request of the Brahmanas in Vrindavan, different yajna stalas set up in the courtyard. So all the major temples had their yajna stala, and they had their own priests, and they did their own, because if you hadn't done that, then they wouldn't have accepted that the deities were actually installed and that this temple was, bona fide. Mm-hmm. But what Prabhupada did, he had a kirtan party, just walking around and chanting the whole Hare Krishna Maha Mantra during the whole thing. And there are actually photos of Prabhupada sitting in the stalas, and the guy's doing this and putting this in his hand and doing this and doing that, mudras and offering, and Prabhupada is sitting. The look on his face is just, oh, would you please get this over, please. Just get this over. Let's go see the Lord, Mm-hmm. It was so, it's actually symbolic, his face and his body language while he was accepting those things. Anybody can see them in the archives if you look hard enough. Every once in a while, the photos circulate.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. But also, the fact of the matter is, there's many people who chant Hare Krishna who don't have the same effect as the pure devotees. So to have the yajna be properly performed and have it be effective and efficient, then the devotees should be pure who are chanting. They should be pure devotees. Offenseless chanters. Then it's very effective. Yes.
The way that
Bhakti Patrick.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, the way that the insults of Sisupala were dissected and kind of shown to be just the opposite of what he was saying reminded me of in the third canto when Duryodhana was insulting Vidura and he left home and he took it as the internal potency kind of helping him separate and go off so he can ask questions from the rishi. And is this another instance of that? How the material energy will degrade them? Yes.
Well, it's not what it is. It's an example of Saraswati speaking through the demon to try to blaspheme the devotee or the Lord, and actually praising him. It's Saraswati tricking the demon. That's what it actually is.
She does that to kind of make fun of the demon or to benefit the demon?
To glorify the Lord. Glorify the Lord. I don't know if I don't know.
Kind of sarcastic sort of in a way.
Yeah, it is. But I don't know if Saraswati is trying to embarrass the person, or if it's just, her way of glorifying the Lord. Either way, it's the same. Comes out the same. There is one detail that was given by our acharyas that wasn't given in the text or the purports, and that is that Sisupala, because he was different than Jai and Vijay, Hiranyakashipu and Ravana, or Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha and Ravana and Kumbhakarna, because they never accepted him as the Lord. And specifically Ravana wasn't chanting his name his whole life. He wasn't chanting, Rama's name his whole life, even in anger. He was just so wound up in doing his austerities and becoming the ruler of the whole universe and lording it over the demigods, and that was his jolly. He got his jollies up to, by lording it over the demigods and bossing around Narada Muni and stuff like that. But Sisupala actually knew who Krishna was, and he was actually envious of Krishna from the beginning, and was always saying Krishna's name in enmity from the beginning. So therefore he had a special qualification, and therefore, as a result of that qualification, as the Sudarshan Chakra was coming to Kadapa's head, there was an instant in which he actually got appreciation for Krishna. Krishna's pastimes are extremely choreographed. How does that compare to Putana's? Well, Putana was special. I mean, Krishna took her breast milk. That's the difference. He drank her breast milk. So it was more personal and more intimate and more, special. She had taken the form of the most beautiful demigoddess, and even Yoda and even Rohini, and the ones who were the most protective of Krishna. They had no problems letting Krishna go sit on her lap. So it's really special compared to Sisupala, who was standing up, waiting, like it said in the text, waiting for the thing to be enough done So that if he pulled it off, he would have ruined everything. There would have been a bloodbath, and the whole sacrifice would have been ruined. And Krishna, sliced up the head in such a way not a drop of hit the ground. It's really, really special. Anyway, that's what we've heard. That's what I've heard from the acharyas, what they say about that. I can't remember everything that Srila Prabhupada said. I wish I could remember a hundredth of it, a thousandth of it. I just try to repeat what I have heard from authoritative sources, following the footsteps of all the acharyas who speak in these books. And, anyway, it works. Works. Do we have anything from cyberspace now?
Nothing, no, not for the...
If Rasa Risik is out there, I'm going to write, I have a letter in my inbox and I'll respond to it tomorrow. Hare Krishna. All right, thank you so very much, everybody. All of you out on cyberspace. We hope you're having a lovely day and a lovely time. And we'll be back tomorrow at 4 o'clock Central Time. Right here in Rattle Lane. Same place, same station, same time.
4:30 or 4?
I don't know. 4:30?
Yes.
4. Look, usually 4:30? 5:36. Yes, 4. I'm sorry. Thank you, Sarva. Without you, what would we do? Okay, sorry. We got a rectification from the, what do they call that priest? The referee. The referee priest has now corrected the timing, so that we will have a proper yajna and everything will be successful. Tomorrow night, 4:30 in the afternoon. See you then. Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai. Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.